Hi everybody, welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. My name is Jared. In this video, we're going to talk about something that was said in this Fireside in a talk by Carl R. Anderson. He is a historian that specializes in the Kirtland period of church history, and his talk was just full of gems and things that I had never heard before. And we're going to talk about one of those things right now. I would encourage you to watch this. I'll put the link for it in the description box below. You can also go to my Facebook page for Christian Homestead, and it's there too. In fact, I just posted this today. Today is, for me, I'm recording this on Friday. Really quick, though, before we get too far, I just wanted to give you the update on the Flood the Earth Challenge. We've had 2 new baptisms. So we now have a total of 47 people that have been baptized as a result of the Flood the Earth Challenge. So you can see it really is important to share the Book of Mormon. It is the main harvest tool for this last dispensation. And you never know when someone is ready to receive it. For all you know, the Lord has done all sorts of things to get them ready for the moment when you give them the Book of Mormon. So be prayerful, but also don't hold back. You know, you may be the only person that gives somebody a Book of Mormon and then their life changes forever. If you want to participate in the challenge, just let me know, share a Book of Mormon, and then let me know how many you shared in the comments section of any video, or send me an email. And make sure to include #flood to help me find your, that's what I searched to find your comment or your email. And this is meant to be a motivator tool. It's not a competition. It's not a study. So we're not trying to boost anybody's egos, and we're not trying to just track random people getting baptized. It's a motivator tool. It's supposed to motivate you to share the Book of Mormon, and then all of us do this big project together and then track our success. So, okay, so let's go back to this, the post that I did earlier today. And I said this. This is that amazing Fireside by Carl R. Anderson. He said he believes the purchase of the Kirtland Temple is related to the second coming. Okay, and then I was looking through the comments, and Beth Jukes, which I'm actually going to be interviewing her tomorrow. She was one of the ones that responded to my call to start a YouTube channel. I'm going to interview her, promote the channel. Her channel is Stand as a Witness, so please make sure to subscribe to her and support her. I know that she has a strong testimony, and she has a lot of good things to share with the world. So she left this comment that says, I think his exact phrasing was that the transfer of the Kirtland Temple was a turning of a key on the other side of the veil that is going to result in an acceleration of the building of the kingdom and the coming of the Savior. So thank you, Beth, for leaving that comment. And I wanted to go and just verify exactly what he said. So he just got done talking about Joseph Smith and Hiram Smith. And then he says, so many who have prophesied what we've just witnessed with the transfer of the Kirtland Temple, as well as other prophecies. And I believe that it was orchestrated by the other side. And I think that it was time for that to happen. And I think it's a key that has been turned on the other side of the veil that is going to result in an acceleration of the building of the kingdom and the coming of the Savior. So, I mean, that's in line with what we've already studied on the channel. I have a bunch of quotes from President Nelson and others that indicate that they do expect large growth really soon. And if some of that's because of the Kirtland Temple for some reason, then it all goes together. I don't know. But I do think that he's right. Now, one of his books is on archive.org. It's called Joseph Smith's Kirtland, Eyewitness Accounts. So let's dig into why this might be. And some interesting things that happened with Kirtland that I didn't know, namely that there was a scourge on Kirtland, and that has been lifted. In fact, it was Ezra Taft Benson that lifted the scourge. We're going to get into that in just a minute. So, okay. We are on page 246 of his book, Joseph Smith's Kirtland, Eyewitness Accounts. And it says, the first ward in Kirtland since the 1830s was created on June 5th, 1977. Let's pause right there. I don't know why, but it seems like important things happen whenever there's like a 7, or especially when there's double 7s. You'll remember that the St. George Temple was dedicated in 1877. And I always thought that that was significant. I think it was the Richmond, Virginia temple that was the 77th temple, or no, the 177th temple. No, the 77th temple was the Palmyra temple. Let me just double check here. Let's go to LDS temples. Sorry, I wasn't planning on talking about this really. Let's go to chronology. Okay, so here's the St. George, Utah temple, dedicated April 6th through 8th of 1877. And it's the longest continually operating temple in the church. And then the 77th, let me just see if I got it right. Yes, I was right. April 6, 2000, the Palmyra, New York temple. And we all know that that was a significant temple to be constructed and dedicated. It was so significant that they broadcast it to I believe, to the entire church. So you could watch it via satellite broadcast to your local stake center. So 77 really seems to mean something, right? And so we're talking about the first ward in Kirtland since the 1830s. Being created in 1977 of all years. Jack Davis, who was called as the bishop, is a Latter-day Saint witness that the Lord is building up Kirtland. Okay, the building up of Kirtland. It's not just New Jerusalem. It's not just Independence, Missouri. It's also Adam-on-Diamond. Eventually, it's going to be Far West. And also Kirtland. These places that we had to abandon, they're coming back to us, and we are coming back to them. Okay, reflecting on his move to the area, he told members of his ward, quote, "I was in another area and working in a job unrelated to the job I have here in Kirtland. For the first time in the history of our company, an individual was assigned to a job in which he was not experienced and given new responsibilities. People wondered why it was done. I wondered why it was done. Little did I know. But in the 38th section of the Doctrine and Covenants, we are given a clue as to why I and many of you came here. Wherefore, for this cause I gave unto you the commandment that ye should go to the Ohio. There is no doubt in my mind that the saints who have now gathered in the Ohio were directed to be here by the Lord for the building up of this area. The year 1979 was a significant one for the saints in northern Ohio. On August 7th, the stakes there, with a membership of some 10,000, were organized in the Cleveland region. And on October 14th, while serving as president of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles, Ezra Taft Benson broke ground for a meeting house in Kirtland, the first building of the church to be built there since the temple was completed in 1836. So, you guys, it is no longer 1836. Okay, let's get with the times. It is no longer 1836. We do not have to stay in Utah, Idaho, Arizona, and I'm not suggesting that, you make plans right now to return to these places, whether it's Missouri or Kansas or Ohio or Illinois. But we are now able to do this without the same persecution that we experienced before. And I've heard time and time again, and I've seen it for myself unknowingly. I've actually, I think, been part of it. There's been all these members of the church that have been moving to these areas, Kansas, Missouri, Ohio, Illinois, to these, around these key locations, Kansas City, which is where you have Independence, Missouri, Jackson County, and then Far West and Adam-on-Diamond. People feeling drawn to go to Kirtland, Ohio. I just met with some when I went to Kirtland to go see the eclipse. They felt drawn there. So maybe just be open to that. It's not going to be right for everybody. There's not going to be a big call to go to Jackson County or any other place. But I think for some people it is appropriate if they have the means and if they're feeling the spirit. Don't just show up there. I guess they have that problem at Adam-on-Diamond where people just show up without a plan. Don't be that person. You need to have a job and a way to support yourself. But if you feel the call, maybe you should think about it. Remember, I don't know if you know this or not, but if you go to family search, there's a place right here called activities. You click on that. Okay. And then you go to all activities. and it brings you to this page right here. And on this second row down, there's this called My Nauvoo Relative. And when you click on that, it'll go through your family tree and show you what relatives you have that were in Nauvoo. You know, here's some of mine. And I'm sure a lot of you have this too, if your family's been in the church for a long time. And just remember, if there hadn't been persecution, and if we hadn't been driven, to Utah, we would have stayed in these places. We would have built them up. Nauvoo, independent, or the city of Zion, New Jerusalem. That's what they hoped to do. They were hoping to build these cities, but they were driven out into the desert, and they built Salt Lake City, which is great, and it has a history of its own. And I love Salt Lake. That's where I'm from. But we're now in a period of time when we don't have to stay there, and we haven't had to stay there for a while. But now these places are being built up. I did want to address a comment that I saw recently. This is from, excuse me, the handle C.L.888. My mother and I were converts to the church. I always felt bad I didn't have any pioneer ancestors. Later in life, when I did my genealogy, I found out I had many ancestors that were members of the church, including Lorenzo Snow, who is my third cousin 5 times removed. Isn't close, but it is still special to me. Well, and let me say this. If you join this church, you now have a new heritage. And this is your heritage right here. It doesn't matter if you have biological ancestors that come back to these places. These places can be for you too. And I think the Lord is going to bring many people here and build it up. We weren't able to do it the first time. We weren't ready as a church, worthy as a church to do it. But I think we're getting to that point that now we are. And so, I don't know. I think it's a very special thing if you're able to do it. And if you can't, at least visit these places. But I feel like something big is going on here, So anyway, this was back in 1979. Now, after that, there's another section called The Scourge is Lifted. Before we get to that, I want to read some scriptures. So the first one, I've already done a video about this. This was after, the video that I made was after we found out that the Kirtland Temple was purchased. I wanted to see if there were any prophecies that had to do with the Kirtland Temple. And it turns out that there are. So DNC 117, revelation given through Joseph Smith the prophet at Far West, Missouri, July 8th, 1838, concerning the immediate duties of William Marks, Newell K. Whitney, and Oliver Granger. Verily, thus saith the Lord unto my servant William Marks, and also unto my servant Newell K. Whitney, let them settle up their business speedily, and journey from the land of Kirtland, before I, the Lord, send again the snows upon the earth. Let them awake and arise and come forth and not tarry, for I, the Lord, command it. Therefore, if they tarry, it shall not be well with them. So you guys, what was going on here is they were basically wrapping things up. They were wrapping things up in Kirtland. There was a gathering in Missouri, and there were those that were left behind that were like finishing up different transactions and selling land and stuff like that. But they were all supposed to get to Missouri. So Kirtland was essentially being abandoned. Later on in the section, it says, therefore let him come up hither speedily unto the land of Zion, and in the due time he shall be made a merchant unto my name, saith the Lord, for the benefit of my people. And again, verily I say unto you, let all my servants in the land of Kirtland remember the Lord their God, and mine house also, to keep and preserve it holy. Okay, now that's like, take care of it while you can, and to overthrow the money changers in mine own due time, saith the Lord. Even so, amen. So we all know what happened after this point. The church lost possession of the Kirtland Temple, the first temple in about 2,000 years to be constructed and dedicated. We lost possession of it. It went into the hands of various parties, and it ended up in the possession of the RLDS Church, which later rebranded itself the Community of Christ. And it turns out that mine own due time turned out to be March 5th, 2024. That's pretty incredible. Okay, the next one, this is D&C 124, verse 83. And this is kind of like the core of what I want to talk about in this video. This is the main topic. If he will do my will, let him not take his family unto the eastern lands, even unto Kirtland. Nevertheless, I, the Lord, will build up Kirtland, but I, the Lord, have a scourge prepared for the inhabitants thereof. So Kirtland was going to be built up again at a later date, but in between that time, there was going to be a scourge. And guess what? We're going to read the story of when the scourge was lifted in just a minute here. So the plan to build up Kirtland again, and again, it's going on. You know, we just read the account of when the first ward building and ward were created in the Kirtland area. So it kind of started back then in the 1970s, in like 1979. But it seems like things are accelerating. Now, in regards to what I just read about this scourge, I wanted to see if I could find out anything from the church website or through the scripture citation index, see if anybody had cited that scripture in order to elaborate on it. And I couldn't find anything. What I did find, I went to the Institute Manual for Doctrine and Covenants, and it has an entry in here for not that exact verse, but a verse related to it. Let me just read this because it goes along with what we're talking about. Almon Babbitt served as a member of Zion's camp and was called as a member of the first quorum of the 70. In October 1840, the prophet Joseph Smith called him to preside over the Kirtland, Ohio stake. In a letter announcing his call, the prophet wrote, quote, "It has been deemed prudent to advise the Eastern brethren who desire to locate in Kirtland to do so. Consequently, you may expect an increase of members in your stake, who will probably be but young in the faith and who will require kind treatment." End quote. After receiving these instructions, Almon became overzealous. Okay, that's a key word, overzealous, in his efforts to rebuild Kirtland, and not only encourage members in the eastern United States to gather to Kirtland, but also immigrating converts from England. He also tried to persuade church members already living in Nauvoo, Illinois, to move back to Kirtland. Quote, "These strenuous efforts would have built up Kirtland at the expense of other Mormon communities, including Nauvoo." The Lord pointed out that Almon Babbitt had tried, quote, "to establish his counsel instead of the counsel which I have ordained, even that of the presidency of my church," end quote. He compared Almon Babbitt's zeal in building up Kirtland to setting up a golden calf for the worship of my people. This has reference to the children of Israel who turned away from the commandments of the Lord to worship the golden calf Aaron built. When church members put other pursuits before God's will, they may stray from or ignore his counsel and commandments. Just as there is no salvation in worshiping a graven image or golden calf, there is no saving power in following counsel contrary to the counsel the Lord gives through his chosen servants. Because of his actions, Almon Babbitt was disfellowshipped from the church for a time. He later returned to full fellowship and served faithfully for the rest of his life. So the Lord was not trying to gather people to Kirtland. They were gathering to Missouri, into Nauvoo, and you can probably understand his sentiment. He wanted to, not lose Kirtland. You don't want to lose. It's a spiritual war. You don't want to see Satan win. You want to hold your ground, but that's not what the Lord had planned at that time. Okay, and the last one is D&C 58. "And now verily I say concerning the residue of the elders of my church, the time has not yet come for many years for them to receive their inheritance in this land, except they desire it through the prayers of faith, only as it shall be appointed unto them of the Lord." This has reference to Missouri, but you could extend it to these other places too, like Illinois and Kirtland and the surrounding areas. Okay. Now, what I'm about to read to you, it's not just from Anderson's book. You can find this on the BYU Religious Study Center. It has this from the book Kirtland, Ohio, A Guide to Family History and Historical Sources by Kip Sperry, where he has like a timeline of events for Kirtland, Ohio. And not that one. The one that we're going to be reading about is when President Benson lifted the Scourge off of the city of Kirtland in 1979. You can find it here. It's also mentioned in Church News, and then there's also a Deseret News article about it. So just so you know, and if you want to read more, I'll put the links for those in the description box below. But we're going to return to this book, Joseph Smith's Kirtland, Eyewitness Accounts by Carl R. Anderson. And I'm not going to read through the book. What I did is I took the quotes that he put in here from Ezra Taft Benson, and we're just going to read those from my spreadsheet. So I have two new entries. One is row 133, Kirtland, Ohio, and then the other one is row 134, Kirtland Scourge. And if I remember right, we start with this one right here. So at the time, Ezra Taft Benson was president of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles. Quote, "The scourge that was placed upon the people in that prophecy," referring to D&C 12483, "is being lifted today on October 14th, 1979. Our prophecy said that yet your children may possess the Kirtland lands, but not until many years shall pass away. Those many years have, I feel, passed away, and now is the time. Now is the time to arise and shine and look forward to great progress in this part of the Lord's vineyard." Okay? So, and again, there's not a mass call to, okay, there's not a mass call to Kirtland or to Jackson County, but now's the time that these places can start being built up again. And if you're able to participate in that, then it's going to be a really good experience for you. And I'm excited for the people that already live in these places. I don't live very close. I live on the other side of Wichita, basically from Kansas City, like an hour outside of Wichita. But I'm really happy to be in this part of the country and to be able to easily access these sites. And maybe later on, I don't know, we'll see what the Lord has in mind for me and my family. I wasn't planning on coming here to Kansas, so who knows what's next. Okay, so after that, then we have Ezra Taft Benson again. He says, "I feel that I've been walking on sacred ground," he commented, "and my soul is subdued and my feelings rather tender." You guys, we just read from David O. McKay's diary. If you saw my video I did a couple days ago, or a couple videos ago, where he had made a visit to Adirondack and Far West and Independence, Missouri. And he mentioned a couple times how he had just been like changed by that experience, how it stuck with him. And now here we have Ezra Taft Benson, and he's like sharing the same sentiment. "I feel that I've been walking on sacred ground," he commented, "and my soul is subdued and my feelings rather tender. As long as the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints endures, and that will be forever, Kirtland, Ohio will have great significance." So you guys, Kirtland is not just something from the past. Kirtland is also the future. I don't think we have a full understanding of what that means, but it's going to continue to be a significant place, not just like a tourist destination, or just a historical site. I think that's how a lot of people view Kirtland, and I do not believe that that's the case at all. Again, we don't know the full story. We'll find out more in the years to come and during the millennium, but I think there's great things ahead for Kirtland. Okay, and then the last one, also Ezra Taft Benson, he says, let's see. Well, no, this is quoting from the book. Okay, so another significant milestone in Kirtland was the organization of a stake there on October 16th, 1983. President Benson, who presided on that occasion, reiterated that the church in Kirtland would continue to grow, and that, there's like a duplicated word, and that the prophecies of rebuilding were coming to pass. "We have quote, "We have barely scratched the surface of missionary work in the Kirtland area," he said. So all this talk about the building up of Kirtland. A lot of times we think about the building up of like the New Jerusalem. More broadly, when we talk about the building up of Zion, we're talking about the church as a whole, but these specific locations will be built up. I can only assume, and I think it's a pretty good assumption, that Adam-on-Diamond is going to be built up, that there will be a city there. They did have plans for a city. There was a temple block that was dedicated, not like cornerstones, but like a block in general that was dedicated for a temple. These places are going to come back. They're going to come back to life. These waste places, these essentially these like spiritual deserts, they're going to be coming back to life. And we're witnessing it right now as we speak. But yeah, we have an actual date when the scourge was lifted. And it's so weird to me. I mean, maybe there's some other church publication or writing somewhere that talk about the scourge, but I had a really difficult time finding anyone that was talking about this scourge, except for the story of Ezra Taft Benson lifting the scourge. So I looked at that date, October 14th, 1979, which, by the way, 14, that's 2 sevens. And for that year, if we go to the Hebrew calendar, it just so happened that it was Simchat Torah, which, now this is according to the diaspora. You have the Jews in the land of Israel. They celebrate Simchat Torah in Shemini Atzeret on the same day. It's basically the 8th day of the Feast of Tabernacles. But if you're in the diaspora, their calendar shows that they split it up into 2 days. But Simchat Torah was the day that the war started in Israel. Now, it would have been according to the Israel calendar, but it's just interesting that it happened on that day. It's a day of celebration, by the way. It's a very happy day. So you have this that took place. And then I wanted to see, with him lifting the scourge, did that have to do with the community of Christ? Because maybe him lifting the scourge led to the Kirtland Temple coming back into our possession March 5th of 2024. If you look at their history, there were some interesting things going on at that time. Let me just read a little bit about that. In 1976, so just 3 years before, W. Smith designated his son, Wallace B. Smith, as his successor. Okay, we're talking about the Community of Christ. But at this time, they were not yet called the Community of Christ. This was the RLDS, the Reorganized Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Wallace B. Smith assumed the presidency in 1978, just the year before the Kirtland scourge was removed, after a 2-year transition period. W. Smith then retired and became the church's first president emeritus until his death in 1989. Skipping down, he also continued, so Wallace B. Smith, the son, he also continued the progressive trend in the church. Okay, the progressive trend, which I would argue has led to what just happened a couple months ago. Because the church decided to go more progressive and kind of water down their beliefs and not believe so much in the literal aspects of their doctrine, I think that has led to people that don't really take church very seriously. It's more of a philosophy, or it's just a good thing to do. It's almost like being part of a club. Because for a while now, as we've noticed in the Community of Christ financials, they've had an issue with tithing. Because, if times are hard, if the economy is getting worse and the cost of living is going up and the world's becoming more and more secular, why would you pay tithing to a church that doesn't really stress it that much? So you see what I mean? And so as a result, they've had to come up with ways to bring in revenue. They're going to try and get the youth more involved in paying tithing, and they have some other plans. But part of those plans has been the sale of historic assets. And we were wondering and speculating, could they sell the Kirtland Temple? Well, the answer was yes. They did. They sold the Kirtland Temple. And had they stayed true, I think, to their original beliefs and the more literal aspects of their doctrine, maybe they wouldn't have gotten into that situation. So anyway, Wallace B Smith, he also continued the progressive trend in the church and first suggested the change in its name to Community of Christ, which I recently found out the name didn't change until like 2001. I thought it was 1984. I was confusing that with something else. In fact, this next thing. In 1984, W.B. Smith presented a document which would become Section 156 of the Doctrine and Covenants of their church, which called on the church to open priesthood ordination to women. The document also called upon the church to build a temple dedicated to peace, reconciliation, and healing of the spirit in independence. So that's why I thought it just like all happened at once, but the name change didn't happen until later. When the temple was completed and dedicated on April 17th, 1994, the headquarters of the church was transferred from the auditorium building, which is like their conference center, to the temple. Both buildings are on portions of the original Independence Temple lot. Former church historian Richard P. Howard commented that this period resulted in some disaffection and led to intense conflict in scattered areas of the RLDS church. This resulted in a schism, which led to the formation of the Restoration Branches movement and other churches, such as the Remnant Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and the Church of the Lamb of God. Okay, so the people that did hold those original beliefs dear were not happy with Section 156 of their Doctrine and Covenants, introduced in 1984. If you go to Restoration Branches article on Wikipedia, it says religious sect which was formed in the 1980s by members of the Reorganized Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in a reaction against the events of the RLDS 1984 World Conference. So that's basically their general conference. They introduced a new section of the Doctrine and Covenants, which opened up the priesthood to women and other fundamental changes. So the people that were probably the most likely to pay tithing, that would believe that it's like important and a commandment to pay tithing, they took off. There was a schism. Furthermore, there's this. Following the retirement of Smith as prophet president of the church, W. Grant McMurray was appointed as the new president. Okay, so the transfer from Wallace B. Smith, the son, to this new guy, W. Grant McMurray. Although McMurray had been designated prophet president by Smith, some members objected because he was the first church president who was not a direct descendant of Joseph Smith, which they considered to be a distinguishing trait from other denominations of the Latter-day Saint movement. Yeah, so their prophet president, that's what they call it, was always a direct descendant of Joseph Smith up until this time. So you can see how they just there was this big change that took place, and it kind of started in the late 70s, and then a lot of the changes came in the 80s, and then the name change was in 2001. So isn't it interesting that at the time that Ezra Taft Benson lifts the scourge on Kirtland in 1979, you have these big things happening during this time frame in the RLDS church, things that essentially have dictated their future. A lot of their destiny was kind of drawn at that time, around that year, 1979. So it's really interesting to think about. And I think that's all that I had for this one. So I really do hope that things are accelerated, because we now have the Kirtland Temple. Again, it's not just a sentimental place, as some people have suggested. It's not just a historical site. It's what started a lot of the things that we do now. It's where we received priesthood keys, which give us the authority to do what we do. The gathering of scattered Israel, all the ordinances of the gospel. If it wasn't for Elijah in the sealing, the priesthood key for sealing, which is not just for temple sealings, it's for everything. Everything that's recorded on earth by the church is recorded in heaven. It wouldn't be like that if it wasn't for Elijah. So, and it sounds like it has a pretty important future, probably mostly in the millennium, but maybe even before then. So that's going to be it for this one. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, like this video if you liked it, leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Also make sure to share it, and I'll talk to you guys later.